Strikeforce champion at 28 years old. He has just had 4 fights in the 13 years since he beat down BJ Penn, all losses. If you watched my video about the age of decline in mixed martial arts, Nick Diaz re-entered the UFC in 2011 in his prime and was given an immediate title shot. Of course, after missing a press obligation, Nick would be forced to fight Penn instead of champion GSP, a bout that would elude him for nearly 2 years, first due to an injury from St. Pierre that forced an interim title fight with Carlos Condit that he lost, although it was close, then a year-long suspension due to a failed test for marijuana following the bout. After he finally got the big payday in a losing effort against George for the title, he sat for a year until a new UFC deal was reached, and then he was given a fight with Anderson Silva. This bizarre bout would see both men fail post-fight tests, Silva for PEDs, and Diaz again for pot, this time a third strike that saw him get an initial career-killing 5-year suspension, eventually reduced to 18 months.
They're not gonna let me fight, so would I go teach jiu-jitsu?
They're going to take away Nick Diaz's career from a harmless, at worst, harmless, dry plant. Really?
Disillusioned with the sport and able to live off his winnings, Diaz drifted away from fighting and ran into difficulties outside the cage, finally ending his long hiatus after nearly 7 years in a return bout against Robbie Lawler that he didn't even seem like he wanted to do. Given that GSP would step away from the sport just months after defeating Diaz, without the suspensions and Nick being Nick, who knows what kind of prime run he could have had in the UFC. Number 7, Cain Velasquez. When you look at what Cain Velasquez brought to the table in terms of his skill set and athleticism, there's no doubt in my mind that under the right circumstances, he could have been the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time.
I think he's the best in terms of physical ability.
Stipe's the most accomplished heavyweight of all time, but the greatest heavyweight of all time is Cain Velasquez.
He could have had the opportunity to solidify that status and leave no doubt had his career gone differently. But unfortunately, following his second successful title defense, when he ended his trilogy with Junior Dos Santos, his body nosedived. First, after a long wait to fight due to filming Tough, Velasquez was forced out of his bout with Fabricio Verdum due to a knee injury. And then, of course, he returned and made the mistake of not acclimating to the altitude in Mexico City, resulting in the loss of his title. While a rematch was scheduled twice, it would never materialize. First, when Cain was forced out because he had injured his back, and then after defeating Travis Brown at UFC 200 because the commission wouldn't allow him to compete with bone spurs in his back. He'd return 2.5 years later only to lose to Francis Ngannou in 26 seconds and then subsequently retire from competition, as his body was simply never going to be the same.
It's just really frustrating, because I know I'm capable of much more.
All in all, the last part of his career, a whole 6 years, we got a compromised version of Velasquez that never really could have sealed his legacy as the greatest heavyweight ever.
This is getting sad.
Number 6.